He was one of the hardest throwing pitchers of the 1960s, Jim Maloney. He tossed two extra inning no hitters. Joe Tilley's Great Canadian Sports Show. Coming up!
I'm going to stand here for an hour like this.
Yep. Our guest today hails from Fresno, California. He was a high school football, basketball, and baseball star. He was scouted by MLB teams as a shortstop. At Fresno City College, he was a star pitcher. He played 12 seasons in the major leagues for the Cincinnati Reds and California Angels, a former National League All-Star. He had more than 200 strikeouts in 4 straight years. He struck out 18 batters in one game. He had 10 or more wins in 7 straight seasons. He pitched 2 no-hitters. He is in Cincinnati Reds Hall of Fame. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program, Jim Maloney. Jim, great to have you here, my friend.
Hey, Joe. Nice. Thanks for having me.
Okay, I want to start at the beginning. You were a high school star in football, basketball, baseball, and why did you choose baseball?
Well, I think that baseball was my main position or interest at that time. I played Little League Baseball here when it first came out to the West Coast, and I was 10 years old, and that's what I went to do. But I was liked all sports, and I excelled in football and basketball, but I was a much better player as a baseball player, and I wanted to be a major leaguer. I had dreams as a kid of playing in the major leagues, and so that's why I stayed in baseball. And then when I got into high school, we had a real good high school team, and got out of high school in '58, and went on. I had a scholarship up to Cal Berkeley and went one semester there. I made the Frosh basketball team, and then I came back to Fresno. That's mid-semester to City College, and that's where I signed. I signed April Fool's Day, 1959. How's that deal? To go play ball.
April Fool's Day. Yeah. So here you are in high school as a shortstop, scouted by all 16 major league teams as a shortstop. Here's your batting average in high school: 310 as a sophomore, 340 as a junior, and 500 as a senior. Now, and I understand you mentioned you had a pretty good high school baseball team in Fresno. How good were they?
Well, somebody just sent me an email the other day. My sister-in-law lives in Phoenix. She's reading something about some high school records and stuff. And the 1958 Fresno High baseball team was ranked number 1 in 1958 overall of everybody. So I don't know how they come up with that, but we did have a real good ball club. Dick Ellsworth was a pitcher, as you say. I was a shortstop. And Dick Ellsworth, who pitched 10 years with the Cubs and a couple of years with Boston, I believe, and was a major leaguer. And our catcher was a guy named Pat Corrales. He played several years in the major leagues as a backup catcher, and then he went on and he managed Cleveland for a couple of years, and then he ended up in the Dodger organization in the front office for I don't know. He was like 50 years in baseball, and he was our catcher. We had 2 other players that signed pro contracts at that time off that same team, and both of them hurt their arms, and they didn't go too far. Once they hurt their arm, they had to get out and do something else. So we had a real good ball club. Yeah.
Yeah, you had a great ball club, and you were the shortstop, hitting 500, and that's pretty impressive. What made you decide that? Okay, how close were you to becoming a major leaguer as a shortstop rather than a pitcher?
That's a hard question. I really don't know. At that time, there wasn't, we didn't have ESPN and all that stuff that was going on. And Major League Baseball had just moved out to the West Coast in 1958. The Dodgers and the Giants came out here. And all we really knew was Dizzy Dean on Saturdays, the game of the week. And that's all we knew really too much about what how we could make it as a major leaguer. I had no clue about how good I was. I mean, if I could play at that level. But as I said, Dick Ellsworth signed right out of high school with the Cubs, and they took him that night, and he flew him to Chicago for an exhibition game in Comiskey Park against the White Sox, and he pitched 7 innings, and he shut him out for 7 innings. And when I saw that, I always saw how he pitched and how he did playing behind him. I figured that I might have a chance to make it either as a shortstop or as a pitcher. Basically, as a pitcher because I had a real good arm at shortstop. I mean, that's what the scouts, when they came to watch us play and stuff, they about how I could throw the ball across the diamond. I always had a good arm ever since I was a small kid. I don't know how that developed. Maybe it's a God-given thing. I don't know, but it was just one of the things. I had a better arm than kids that were 3 or 4 years older than I was.
Well, this is an interesting story here because this is where it gets interesting. And let's talk about Bobby Maddock because I understand Bobby had a lot to do with your decision to become a pitcher. Tell us about Bobby and your relationship with him.
Yeah, Bobby, there he is. Bobby Maddock is came into see I the night that I graduated from high school. There were all 16 major league teams, and the next 2 days came to our house. They tried to sign me, and there was throwing out money on the table, like 30, 40, $50,000 to sign the contract. And my dad was sort of my agent. He was a successful used car dealer here in Fresno for many, many years. And he said I was worth more money. I would have signed for a Hershey bar, Joe. I was ready to go play ball. And anyway, that's why I ended up going to Cal. I turned everybody down, or he did. And he said I was worth more money. And then when I was at City College, Bobby Maddox snuck into town out of nowhere, called up my dad and said he was down at the Hotel Fresno, and they had the money to sign me. And so we went down. I signed a contract. It was 1959, as I said, April Fool's Day. And they had bonus, my contract and bonus, it amounted to about $100,000 guaranteed. So that was a lot of money in 1959. So that's how I got signed. Bobby Maddox had signed Frank Robinson and Veda Pinson out of Oakland, major league ball players, good ones. Frank was an All-American. He signed a bunch of other players. He also signed Mel Queen, who
Right.
spent some time with the Blue Jays. And Mel had a good arm too, and they converted him into a pitcher. He ended up winning 14 games for the Reds when I was a teammate of his. Then we played together at the Angels, and then when he got out of baseball, he called Bobby Maddock. Bobby Maddock had signed him because Maddock had moved up in that Blue Jay organization, and Maddock gave him a job as a roving pitching instructor. Then I believe he became the pitching coach of the Blue Jays a little later, I believe.
He did. Mel Queen was the pitching coach for the Blue Jays. As a matter of fact, Mel Queen was manager of the Blue Jays for 5 games, I think it was, back in the early 80s. Yeah. So,
Uh-huh.
yeah. So, so Bobby convinced you to go into take the pitching route. Rob, obviously a pretty good idea. Uh, how did it feel to get signed by a major league ball club? And I know they didn't have radar back then, but in the 1963 season, you went 23-7 with 265 strikeouts, and it's rumored that you hit the 100-mile-an-hour mark on your fastball. Is that true?
Joe, they didn't have the radar gun in those days. I can just tell you that basically I threw a fastball and I threw extremely hard. I had an excellent curve. I had an overhand hard curve. Some like if people have seen Koufax or Nolan Ryan in their day, there was a fastball and a hard curve, and that's basically what I pitched. And when I got to like 2 balls and no strikes on Willie Mays or Hank Aaron, they knew they were going to get a fastball, and I'd have to challenge them. And there are days that I could throw the fastball right by him. So if you want to look, somebody put 100 miles an hour, 99 point some miles an hour. I would say I pushed that 100 mile an hour mark right at it, or maybe above, or maybe just a little bit below. for 9 innings. I pitched 9 innings, complete games in those days.
Right, and you pitched 9 innings at a time when a lot of pitchers pitched 9 innings, and a lot of people went way over the 100 pitch mark, like they get called on after today, right? So you had in your career you had 5 one-hitters. Your career record is 134 and 84, a career ERA of 3.19, 1,605 strikeouts. Those are awesome numbers. You're also one of only a handful of pitchers to have 2 or more no hitters. You actually had 3 of them, but you had one taken away because of a rule change back in June of 1965. Let's talk about that one first. Talk about that no hitter.
That was the first. That was my first no hitter. Actually, I had to pitch 10 innings. After 10 innings, I pitched the game in Cincinnati, Crosley Field, against the Mets, and that's the one I had 18 strikeouts in. And that night I was really unhittable. I mean, I really had outstanding stuff. Of all the games that I started, I mean, that was one night where I went out there and said, man, I really felt good and I could do it. And I had 10 innings of no-hit ball. Score was 0-0. In the 11th inning, I went back out there, and Johnny Lewis hit a home run off me. So I ended up losing that game 1-0. So, but they gave me a credit for a long time for a 10-inning no-hitter as a major league record. So for a long time, I had 3 no-hitters, and I was tied with Bob Feller. Bob Feller had 3 no-hitters, and at that time, Koufax had 4. But as time went on, Nolan Ryan has ended up, I think, he's thrown 7.
Yeah.
But so anyway, I played golf in a celebrity tournament back in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and I was sitting at the table with Bob Feller, and he said, you only throw 2 no hitters. He sort of was a little bit upset about it. And I said, well, I got credit for 3. I can't, and this and I said, yeah, but he says you got beat. You got beat in the 11th inning. And he, was complaining about that. And then I went back to Fresno, and I got called by a writer from New York, and they said they'd changed some rules. They've taken some no hitters away, and Harvey Haddock pitched 13 innings of perfect innings, and he got beat by a home run. He was credited with a no hitter, and they took that away. And they had a lot of guys in the major leagues that pitched no hitters after 5 innings and maybe rained out. Maybe the rain came. They took all those off, and then he said they took yours off, and so that put me back in the 2 category. And then the next year I went to Sioux Falls, and Bob Feller came up to me and he said, see, he said, they took you out of, I got out of his category. I guess he was happy that I got out of his category.
Yeah, he was probably chirping so much. That's why they made the decision to take your no-hitter away. But let's talk about that, the first official no-hitter then, okay? So this is August 19th of that same year, 1965. This is no easy task. You're facing the Chicago Cubs in Chicago. No score through 9. You scored in the 10th. So here's the final out. Tell us about this final out.
Yeah, this was another game. It was 10 innings. After 9 innings, I'm sitting on the bench. I look at the scoreboard out there in center field at Wrigley Field, and it's 0-0, but I've given up no hits. And I'm thinking to myself, it was 2 months prior to that in June where I lost that game in Cincinnati in 10 innings. And I'm thinking to myself, this is awful tough league here. I got to pitch extra innings to, complete this game and try to win this game, and more or less try to pitch a no hitter. And I had to go back out there. But in the 9th inning, we were hitting. In the 10th inning, we were hitting. I was in the on-deck circle. Leo Cardenas, our shortstop, he hit a ball down the left field line. It was curving, and I'm thinking, oh man, it's got a chance to go out. I said, stay fair. I'm saying to myself, and it curved and hit the foul pole. Hit the foul pole down the left field line, Wrigley Field. So we ended up getting a 1-0. And I go back out, and I walked a guy. I was wild that day. I walked a bunch of guys. I think I hit 2 guys. I struck out 12 or 13 guys. I had, I think, 187 pitches. That's what they counted for me that day. And I had a guy on first with 1 out, and Ernie Banks was the last hitter there. And he had a ground ball to Leo at short, and Rose was playing second. and made a double play. So I ended up within 2 months of winning a 10 inning no hitter, 1-0, and also losing a 10 inning no hitter, 1-0.
Yeah, that was a pretty formidable lineup, no doubt about it. But
Yeah.
here's the interview that you did after that game back in August of 1965. Let's have a listen, Vic.
Jimmy, that's got to be a real great thrill for you.
Well, I lost one early in the year, 1-0 against the Mets, and I thought maybe I might be in the same predicament today if all Williams had to do was Banks hit one out, and there I am 1-0 again getting beat. But I'm glad it turned out the way it did. It's got to be. I wasn't real sharp today. I had a lot of made some good pitches when I had to, but when I had to come in there, they popped it up or something, and I had a lot of walks, but I wasn't real sharp as I was against the Mets. But I think this is the biggest game of my career right here.
Well, as far as I was concerned, Jim, you were very sharp, because in sitting behind the screen for the last inning, your ball was moving, and you kept it in great spots. Even when you were 3-1, you kept the ball around knee high.
Well, I didn't want to. I knew when I lose a little edge on my fastball, it tends to move more. I don't know what this is. Edwards told me, he said the last 3 innings my fastball's sinking and tailing real good, and we'll stay with it most of the way. As far as the no-hitter was concerned, I knew I had the thing all the way. I was just real thrilled the way it would come out.
That was so awesome. So here you go. Like, as you mentioned, 187 pitches. I think you walked. You worked for this. You worked for this no-hitter. 10 full innings. 187 pitches. You walked 10 guys. You hit a couple of batters. You had, I don't know how many 3-2 counts. I was watching the last couple innings of that game and recently,
Right.
and you know, what an incredible performance. But it was like you just kept battling and just kept battling. Did you have a premonition that perhaps this was going to happen?
Well, every game that I pitched, Joe, I believe that I put myself in a frame of mind that I was going to pitch a perfect game. And I did one pitch at a time. Basically, that's what I had pitched. And if I got the first hitter out, then I was going to get 26 more. And then if somebody got a hit, then I was going to have a one hit and shut them out the rest of the one pitch at a time. And I felt that I could pitch a no hitter every time I went out on the mound. That's how I felt about the way I could throw the ball. And there was about 6 years there that I pitched at that level that I could overpower a lot of those hitters. They were major league hitters. They were good hitters. And I pitched against Willie Mays for 10 years and Hank Aaron for 10 years. And Mays, in those days we played a lot of teams a lot. We go out to the West Coast 3 times, and they'd come to our place 3 times. And today, like the Reds, the way that the thing is set up, they only come out here to the West Coast 1 time, and they play 4 games, and that's it. But not in those days, they played 20. We played each other 24 times. And Mays, he didn't hit 200 off me my whole career. And he had a lot of bats at me. But there were certain guys like Willie McCovey, the big left-handed hitter the Giants had. He was a tough out for me. And and then another hitter was a kid that played up there in Montreal, LeGrand Orange. You know who that is, don't you?
LeGrand Orange, Rusty Staub.
Rusty Staub. And when he was in Houston, he wasn't a home run hitter per se, but that guy could hit. And he was a tough out for me. I could throw my glove up there and he'd get a hit out, but then I know he went up to Montreal and they loved him up there, and he was a big celebrity guy. And but he was a good ball player and a good hitter. And Willie Stargell with the big left-handed hitter with the Pirates, he was a tough out for me. Roberto Clemente, a right-hand hitter, major Hall of Famer. He didn't like to hit against me. I don't think he hit 200 off me. I don't know what it is, but a lot of times I'd play and he'd come up sick. He wouldn't even show up, So,
So here, when you think about it, okay, so you're facing guys like you said, Willie McCovey and Hank Aaron and Willie Mays, and you're facing these guys, probably 24 games a season.
Yes.
So 5 times a game, you're 125 times. 125 at bats a year against these
Yeah,
guys,
it's
and
a
you're
lot
still
of at
putting up
bats.
numbers
Yes.
like that. That's pretty impressive. So you talked about that year, by the way, 20 you won 20 games in 65, 244 strikeouts. That is so impressive. And you talked about Rusty Staub being a difficult hitter for you. Why was it that Staub was so difficult for you to hit to pitch against?
Yeah, there he is. He was just he was he knew the strike zone. He wouldn't swing. He wouldn't chase bad pitches. These guys today, they swing at all kinds of balls. They're all trying to hit the ball out of the park, and they look like idiots up there on pitchers that got good stuff. They swing at balls 3 feet outside or 2 feet in front of the plate. But Staub was a guy that you throw the ball an inch or two outside, he'll take it for a ball, and he wasn't going to help you out. And he just put the bat on the ball, put it in play. He was sort of a line drive type hitter, and he had some pop. He had some pop in the bat, but he was a good ball player. He was a very good ball player in my day. Very good
Yeah,
hitter.
and he was such a star in Montreal. It was so sad to see the Expos leave from the Canadian standpoint here. How did you feel about the Expos move to Washington?
Well, that was 1968, and the Expos came in the league, and I never been up to Montreal. I've never been up that side of the country in Canada. In fact, the only places in Canada I've been was in Vancouver. I played ball a little in Vancouver. I didn't play. I was in San Diego Padres in the Pacific Coast League for a short time, and Vancouver was in the league. It was the Pacific Coast League in those days, and so I've been up there. And but when we went to Montreal, that was a whole new thing. And I think the hotel we stayed was like the Queen Elizabeth Hotel in
Uh-huh.
downtown Montreal. I don't even know if it's still going or what, but uh, and Joe, the first thing when I got to Montreal, I can remember asking the elevator person. I said, "What's the famous beer here in town, or what's the famous beer?" And you know what they told me? They told me it was, I think, Labatt's 50.
Labatt's
Have you
50.
ever heard?
Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah.
That was
Labatt's 50. I
that's what
have
I
had
drank.
many of those. Yeah, yeah. Labatt's
Yeah.
Blue,
So
Labatt's
anyway,
50, Molson. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, we played out there at Jerry Park. It was a sort of a put up ballpark, and it was right on the flyway of the airport. And when the wind would blow a certain way, and those jets would be landing there right over 1,500 feet above the ballpark, and the noise level was something else. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed going to Montreal. The fans were terrific, and they enjoyed baseball. And but anyway, I never did get to play in the other stadium that they built. It was just basically Jerry Park.
Right. The Big O.
1970
Yeah.
yeah. But
Yeah. Yeah.
it was interesting to going to Montreal. I thought it was a beautiful city.
Right. Yeah, it's unfortunate. That's one of the reasons they had to leave is because they didn't have a proper ballpark. But you spent 11 seasons in Cincinnati. Your final season there was 1970, which was also the final season across the field. You had a foot injury. What happened? How did that tendon injury affect your career?
Uh, well, uh, I came up. I had trouble with my heel, and I came up to hit in 1970, and uh, I hit a ball and ran to first base, and something popped in my heel, and I ruptured my Achilles tendon, and never won another game after that. Joe, it took me a whole year to get over it, and
Oh,
yeah, I got to stand up. My leg was going to sleep here. So
okay.
anyway,
No worries.
yeah.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good.
So,
It's all good.
Yeah, I ran to first base, and I stopped, and they had to help me off the field. And as I said, I never won another game. I had all kinds of problems with my legs. I never had problems with my legs before. After I started going at the end of the year, and they traded me to California Angels, and then I didn't do anything there with the Angels. I was I think 0-3 or 0-4 for the year, and that was the end of my career. So 1972, I got was the first year of the major league strike, and so I got released, and I was with the Cardinals, and I got released with the Cardinals. They kicked everybody out of spring training, so I had no way to go. So I hooked on with San Francisco's AAA club out in Phoenix, and I was 5-0 there with them, and then we finally started playing baseball again. And I asked him to come up to. They were going to bring me up, and they said no, so I retired. I came back home to Cincinnati and got my stuff and my family, and we all moved back out to Fresno.
You had some good offensive support, obviously, and some good defense behind you. You talked about Pete Rose earlier. He really was the red spark plug. He talked about actually making the move from Crossley Field in Cincinnati. Vic, let's just roll that.
Well, the first game there should be just as exciting as this game here. We're anticipating a great opening. They got 52,000 seats, so that's going to be a spectacular. Just seeing 52,000 people at one time in Cincinnati, and it's been a long time waiting to come, and it's here, and we just hope we can play good ball there as we have at Crossley Field. We're going to miss Crossley Field. It's a lot of firsts happened to me here at Crossley Field. I'm going to miss it, but I'm anticipating better and bigger things at the new stadium. I sure hope so.
Well, things worked out with the move. Things worked out with the move. Go ahead.
Yeah, that was the last day, the middle of the season in 1970. They had Riverfront Stadium was built, and after they opened up the season, the second half, we played. They had the All-Star game there in 1970, and then the Reds. We finished the season. They started in Riverfront Stadium, and they've blown up that stadium. Now they have Great America Ballpark. So most of these ballparks since I played, the only one is the ones that are still going are like Wrigley Field and the Dodger Stadium. Outside of that, they've blown up 2 or 3 ballparks. I mean, that's how long I've been.
Right. So we saw Pete there, and two questions here. So first of all, what kind of a teammate was Pete Rose, and should he be in the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, Pete Rose was a great teammate. I'm glad he was on my team. I saw him get 200 hits. I don't know how many years in a row. I mean, he was unbelievable. He was a real good hitter. He had average speed, and his arm wasn't any good. He was a guy that couldn't play really any position. They had to start him at second base, but he had trouble making the double play ball. And then they tried to move him at third. He couldn't throw over to first base. They moved him to the outfield and they played him first base. But when a guy can hit like Rose could, they'll find a place for you to play.
Yes,
that's the hardest thing there is to do, is to hit, and especially at that major league level. And so but to answer the question is, should he be in the Hall of Fame? And every ballpark, from the minor leagues to the major leagues, when you walk into the clubhouse, there's a big sign in there that said, absolutely no gambling on baseball. If you're caught gambling and convicted, it's lifetime ban. And Pete is a gambling addict. He's addicted to gambling, and that's an illness and a disease, and he's never ever stopped. He's went to Vegas, and he had a place in Vegas there where he signed a lot of autographs, and he made lots of money, but he's still betting, and he never stopped betting, never got out of the thing. And I'm sure that if he would have stopped and said, here's what gambling can do to somebody, because he ended up going to prison, and he lost a job because of gambling in baseball. And so he's definitely a Hall of Famer. That's for sure. But the way the rules say that, I was against him getting into the Hall of Fame because of the gambling thing.
Right. And you talked about gambling being an addiction, and of course a thing or two about addiction. About 40 years ago, you had a life-changing situation come about. What happened, what did you do to change your life?
Well, Joe, it's when I ruptured my Achilles tendon, I drank when I pitched. I was on a 5-day man rotation, and when I started that, I was never ever going to uh, uh, go out to the mound and be under the influence of any kind of alcohol like that. And that's what I did. And for many many years, I pitched, and after I'd pitch, I'd go out and I'd have a few beers or a few drinks, and then maybe the next night, and then I'd taper off, and then the night before, I would not have anything, and then get ready for my game the next day or the next night when I was pitching. And as time went on, uh, I found myself drinking more, and but I was still having success. And when you're, when I was having success like that, you think that you're sort of invincible or something. Nothing's going
Hmm.
to happen. Nothing's going to happen serious to you, and they go from there. And I can honestly tell you, and I've told this before many times. I've shared this. That in 1965, the day I pitched that no hitter in Chicago, the night before, I was going back to the hotel, and I said I was going to after I was going to go up, because in those days we played all day games, and Chicago had no lights. I mean, they were all day games, and so anyway, I went back, going back to the hotel, and I said, well, I go to this little place. That was a little place around the corner called the Inkwell, and guys used to hang out in there and go down in there, and they had a bartender that would he had magic tricks, and he'd do stuff with mixing drinks, and he was like a one man show behind there. And so I went down there and I started, and I started, one drink led to another, and I'm pitching the next day, and it got to be about 2 o'clock in the morning, and they shut her down, and I was just terrible. I mean, I staggered back to the hotel. I got back up in the room, and I thought to myself, man, I said I never was ever going to do this. And 6 o'clock in the morning, I heard this boom, like a real, and it shook the whole hotel. And I'm thinking, well, what in the world was that? My roommate was John Edwards, my catcher, and
Right.
he said, I think it was thunder. So we opened up the blinds. I looked outside, and it was pouring down rain. And about that time, the phone rang, and it was a traveling secretary, and he said, they've already called the game. So I don't know. Maybe it was higher power or whatever you want to call it. I slept in that day, and that night I had a steak dinner and went back to bed early the next night. And the next day was that day I pitched that no hitter in Chicago.
Wow.
So that's where I was getting. And so when that Achilles tendon thing hit in 1970 and 71, I found myself out of a job and going back to Fresno. And I was going to take over my dad's car business and live happily ever after. I had a family, and my wife was pregnant at that time. My ex-wife was pregnant at that time with my son. I had two daughters prior to that, and I got back into Fresno, and I had a real hard time uh, getting back into the real world. You know what I mean, Joe? I mean, I had a hard time
Hmm.
getting back into there was no more uh, fans yelling and screaming in the stands, and I was out of that circle of being good at what I did as my job, and I was making good money. And in those days, I mean, there were no $1 million contract, but I was making decent money. And I had so my drinking progressed, and I went down the tubes. I mean, I went down the tubes because of my alcoholism. And in 1985, this was 1972, and no, in 1980, I figured I'd get back into baseball, which I did. And I got a job with the San Francisco Giants, and Fresno had a Class A team. They wanted me to be the pitching coach there to start there, and I said, okay, fine. I did that, and I was drinking. And the next year, they made me the manager, and in 1981, I believe it was, and I'd show up to the ballpark, and I'd be half smashed out, and I'm trying to teach kids how to get to the next level. And it was really a sad situation, Joe. And the fans, I'd go out to the third base line and I'd have dry heaves. And the fans, it's a small ballpark. They were sitting right there. They probably could see me,
Mm.
that kind of deal. And when I went to the winter meetings with the Giants, they fired me. So I lost. They never said anything about my drinking, but that's was the problem. And so I lost a job. Usually when somebody loses their job because of drinking, they sort of gets their attention. And it didn't get my attention at all. For the next 4 years, everything got worse. And my wife asked me to leave the house. And I bunked up with a guy that I hunted and fished with. It was a single man. It was in his place. And I would sit there during the day while he was gone and drinking and just looking out the window. And kids were walking down the street going to school. I was right across from Fresno State College football stadium. And that's where I ended up, Joe. That's where Jim Maloney ended up. And I got a phone call. I got a phone call from the guy that I lockered next to in Cincinnati, a guy named Jim Merritt. He was a left-handed pitcher for Minnesota. Then he got traded to us in the late 60s. And he did a real good job in 1970. He won 20 ball games for us. And so anyway, he would carry a bottle around with him. And I always said to myself, I'm never going to be like this guy. This guy really was sick. And drinking all the time during the day and everything. That was obvious. And I get a phone call, and it was Jim Merritt. And he told me that he'd been sober for 6 years. And I didn't believe him. And he was down in L.A. and they'd heard that Jim Maloney was out, on his ear, and alcohol was, I was having problems with alcohol in my life. And he says, I can give you a number to call. And he says, you can talk to this fellow and you can get some help if you want to do something about your drinking. And so anyway, he gave me a number, and I called this number. And it was a guy named John Newton. He was the medical director of Unocal 76, which is a big gas company here, oil and gas company in California. And they sponsor all the Dodger games. They still do. And he was sitting there, and he was the medical director. And he says, hey, there's a guy sitting here at my desk right now. He wants to talk to you. And I said, who in the world would that be? So he put him on the phone. And he says, hey, you stupid idiot. He didn't say that. He sort of cussed me out.
Yeah.
And what are you doing? Trying to kill yourself? He says, why don't you? He says, we got a spot here you can go to and get some help. And you know what I said? This is how cunning, baffling, and powerful this disease is. I said, let me have a week to think about it. And that's how, that's about how much denial I was in about where I was at that particular time of my life. But anyway, it was Don Newcomb.
Oh,
Don Newcomb, yeah. And Don Newcomb was sort of working as the EAP guy for the Dodgers, and he was working with guys that had problems drinking, and he did a lot of stuff to help. There were several players, Maury Wills. There were several players. Bob Welsh was a pitcher. And anyway, that's what Newcomb did, and he did it for till he passed away. Maybe he passed away about a year ago, I think it was 90 some years old. But Nuke was like 30 years sober, I think, or maybe more than that at the time. But he lockered next to me in Cincinnati with the first year that I signed in 1959, at the end of his career, and I saw him being dragged to get on the plane. He was so drunk because he was scared to fly. And how bad he had a drinking problem at that time. And he had gotten help and had this job with the Dodgers. So anyway, they said to call this number, and I called this number, and it was a treatment program over in Wickenburg, Arizona, called the Meadows. And I did a lot of good things. I made a lot of good pitches in my career, a lot of good choices, pitching and making the right pitch. But the best choice of my life that day, I threw in the towel. I got on a plane. I went to Wickenburg, Arizona. That was February the 5th of 1985. and I haven't had a drink since that day. And God willing, I'm only worried about today, but God willing, this February the 5th, it'll be 40 years. So it,
Wow.
I just live in today, one day at a time. Today is the only day that matters for me.
Yeah, that's beautiful, beautiful story, Jim. And it reminds me so much of my own. I mean, at the end of my drinking, when I was, thought I had it under control. I'm living in my buddy's one-bedroom basement apartment, sleeping on his love seat, and I made the call that one day too. And I ended up going to the
Mm.
treatment center. And my wife, who was estranged at the time, had given me, and I had a wife and 3 kids, and here I am drinking my life away. So I can relate to so much about what your story. It's incredible, really. It truly is. And I know, you know, I know you've helped a lot of people. I know you worked in the recovery field for the city of Fresno. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, whoever knew that I would end up being an alcohol and drug counselor, and I end up. Uh, I don't know. I didn't know what I was doing. I came back to Fresno. I was going to a lot of meetings, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And I ran into a guy that uh, at a car wash that I knew, and he was in recovery, and I didn't know it at the time before. But he said, he said, "You'd make a good counselor." He said, I'm the president of the board of the Alcoholism and Drug Abuse Council here in Fresno. And he said, "Why don't you go down there and talk to Debbie, who is the director, executive director, and you see if you can come." And I said, "Well, I don't have any education or anything." He says, "Don't worry about that." He says, "They'll do something for you." And anyway, I went down there and I applied for a job, and they said, "Well, we'll give you. You can start with an 8-hour job." I said, "Hey, I don't know if I can work 8 hours, to be honest with you." So I started part time, and I did it for a while, and then I went to 8 hours, and I started. They sent me to school. I went to University of Utah for a summer school session with a chemical dependency. I went to UNLV, went over there for that, and then I went to Long Beach Naval Hospital, and I did to a couple of seminars down there. I was in the seminars. I learned about family interventions. I went to a place where I could do family interventions and stuff. And I really learned a lot. And so anyway, they made me the director of the Alcoholism and Drug Abuse Council. So I ran a couple of years, and then I really didn't like that, to be honest with you, Joe. I was more of wanted to do counseling one-on-one. I didn't want to hire and fire and be involved in
Right,
meetings all day. That's about what
right,
it amounted to. And so I said I was going to get out. And one of the preachers that was on my board, I mean, he was one of the top preachers in Fresno at a church, the second largest church. And he said, "I need a guy on campus." He said, "If you're going to get out here," he says, you're the guy I need." He says, "I got a lot of people that have alcohol, drug problems." And he says, "I can send them to you right on campus." So I said, "Well," at that particular time, I was doing a lot of things for the Major League Baseball Players Association. They were having golf tournaments all over the country to help raise money for different charities and different towns and stuff. So I told him, I said, "Well, on the weekends, there's some weekends during the summer," I said, "I'll be, going to a golf outing." And he said, what he told me, he says, I don't worry about it." Uh, he says, "I'm going to get my money's worth out of you anyway." So that's what he said. So anyway, I ended up doing that for 10 years. And that was a big thing in my life. And then I retired, and I met my wife. Of course, I was divorced, and my wife that I remarried with, we reconnected on our 40th high school reunion. We were high school sweethearts. We both married different people, went our own ways. And after 40 years, or after it came back, I was divorced for 10 years. She was divorced for 10 years. And we ended up remarrying, and we've been married for 23 years together. We've had a wonderful life together.
I know you've helped a lot of people, and my friend Brett, who you know very well, was told me that he wouldn't be alive today if it weren't for you, and it's pretty awesome to hear stuff like that. And I know that,
Mm.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, well, Brett, my son-in-law, and married his mother. We were sweethearts, and she'd married, and that was their son. And he's quite a guy. He's really taken to the program, as you know, and he's helping a lot of people, helps himself, and that's the miracles we see. We see those miracles that happen. I'm fortunate one that I haven't been, haven't relapsed, and which is very common as our disease, and so I just hang in there, and I'm still going to meetings and still talking to people, and any chance that I got somebody to help somebody, I give them my 2 cents worth, and try to teach them what you need to do and what they need to do about drinking. But I'm glad I made that choice. I mean, my life for 39 years has been unbelievable without a drink. I always thought, where's all the fun going to be?
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that the last 5 years of my drinking, there was no fun.
Yeah.
But that's alcoholism. That's what it does. It screws up your mind.
Yeah, I know when you talked about, hey, can you give me another week? Can you give me a week to think about it? Because I know I wanted a few days before I went into treatment, just
Yeah.
to unwind a little
Yeah.
bit, have a little bit of
Right.
fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know what?
Yeah.
If
If only
I
my
hadn't done that, who knows? I would not might not have made it, right? Yeah.
That's it. No, good. Like to blame all other people. Only if my wife would get
Yeah.
off my back. I think
Yeah.
we'd be
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
All that stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Then suddenly they're
anyway,
all gone and you're still got the problem. Yeah. So
yeah.
listen, the question I'd like to ask all my guests before I let you go is, what's the best advice you've ever received?
Well, the best advice that I have received was, uh, my drinking. Somebody told me a long time ago, you don't have to drink, and if you don't want to. And I didn't really understand what they meant. But when I went to that treatment program, I learned a lot about my feelings. And alcoholism is a feelings disease. People don't know how to feel; they numb out, and that's what I did. So when I got sober, I was 45 years old, but in my mind, I was like 18 or 19 years old. I was that far uh, apart, So I think that was the greatest advice that I had when Jim Merritt 12-stepped me, called on the phone, said, "Here's a number to call if you want to get some help for yourself." And I grabbed onto that ring and I ran with it.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Jim. We're all better
Th-
off because you're here, and it's great. Uh, Thank you so much for taking this time to join us. I know you got a meeting to get to, so away
Yes,
you go.
thank you, Joe Tilley. It's been a pleasure, real pleasure, and I'm glad to have met you, and now I got to see you and talk to you, be on your show, and just keep doing it, buddy. One day at a time. That's all we can do.
Beautiful. One day at a time. Yes, the pleasure is absolutely mine, Jim. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We've got
Thank you,
more
sir.
when we come back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You bet. Thank you.
Addiction Rehab Toronto, Toronto's #1 alcohol and drug treatment center, saving lives, reuniting families. The only treatment center in the province to offer medical detox, treatment, sober living, and lifetime aftercare all in one place. Our unique and specialized programs are designed to equip our clients with the tools to successfully lead a life of dignity, respect, and purpose. Let us help save your life or your loved one's life. Call today for more information or to facilitate an intervention. 1-855-787-2424 or visit addictionrehabtoronto.ca. Rely on Walton Restoration's 40-plus years of excellence in residential and commercial restoration. Their strong reputation is built on workmanship, professionalism, and outstanding customer service. Trust Walton as your dependable partner in emergencies, serving Durham, Kawartha, and Northumberland regions. Call 905-725-5666 or visit waltonrestoration.com. Experience top-tier workmanship and service. Walton Restoration, the trusted name in property restoration. Join satisfied customers like me.
And we want to thank all the folks who make this show possible. These are friends, trusted business associates, and all-around great people. We highly recommend them all. Thank you for your support of Canadian and local sports. A reminder, this show is available on iTunes, Spotify, Radio Public, Breaker, Google Podcast, Pocket Cast, as well as the Spanglish Network, Buzz TV Live, and Zingo TV. Also, check out the show on YouTube. All of our past great shows are on there. Like and subscribe. It's absolutely free. Thanks once again to Jim Maloney for being on the program. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.
Brian Gribben Insurance Planning, helping you solidify your financial future.
At BGIP, what we do that's unique in the marketplace is we show people how to spend and enjoy their money in the early years of retirement without the fear of running out. Also, we're able to do this without you having to change financial advisors. Please look us up at bgip.ca today. Let's book a 30-minute phone call to see how we can bring value to you and your family in your planning.
Call Brian today for all your retirement needs. We did. 905-686-5678. MNP, a leading Canadian national accounting, tax, and business accounting firm. MNP proudly serves and responds to the need of their clients in the private, public, and nonprofit sectors. Through partner-led engagements, MNP provides a collaborative, cost-effective approach to do business and personal strategies to help people and organizations to succeed across the country and around the world. With local offices in Oshawa, Mississauga, Burlington, and more, their team is here to support you. Visit mnp.ca today to learn more. Rooted in 60 years of tradition, Sleepy Hollow is a private golf club with a friendly community of members just minutes from Toronto. With mature trees and rolling fairways, Sleepy Hollow provides a challenging and enjoyable experience for passionate golfers. Enjoy great golf, amazing dining, and a picturesque patio second to none. Visit sleepyhollowcountryclub.com. Joe Tilley here. My wife Penny Claire and I recently took an amazing trip to Egypt and Jordan with Trip Oppo. And here are our top 10 must-dos. Last but not least, we relaxed at a luxury resort and took a dip in the famous Dead Sea. This beautiful resort was a perfect way to cap off our incredible adventure in Egypt and Jordan. After days of exploring ancient ruins and bustling markets, it was wonderful to just kick back, put on a little mud, and soak up the sun by the Dead Sea. Oh, I almost forgot to mention the amazing cuisine in Egypt and Jordan. Don't forget to try the delicious local food like mouth-watering Egyptian barbecue. And the best part is that our Trip Oppo tour includes almost all of the meals, so you can indulge in the local cuisine without worrying about opening your wallet. I would highly recommend that you book your next trip through Trip Oppo. Call them today. Guests on Joe Tilley Sports receive a gift certificate from Classica Imports. Top of the line imported men's clothing. Check out the Classica Essential Collection now. Go to shopclassica.com.